Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
I don't know. I just want to not hurt after work. Basically, it's basically the place that I'm living in right now.
Well, good luck with that. Mm-hmm. You ready to roll?
Yeah. Let's light this keg.
Okay.
Candle or drink this keg. Light the candle. I don't know where this is going.
I'm just gonna let you spin on that one for a little while. Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs, here as always with Blazers outsider Danny Marang. Danny,
hi,
how
Tara.
you doing tonight?
Well, I'm good. We're literally running home after the games, right after the Nuggets game to.
You literally ran home? Like you left your car behind and ran all the way from
that's
the
definitely not true.
studio to your home?
Yeah, the 15
Because that's what literally means.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to literally hang up here in a second.
Ooh, tough guy.
Yeah, no, I would have been home sooner, but apparently Oregonians don't know that the fast lane is not the place where you go 10 miles below the speed limit in. Especially when there's no traffic. Jerks.
But you know
Get out
what?
of
It
the
was an
fast
early
lane.
game. We're recording this on Sunday after the Denver game. So there's a lot of small things to be glad about. And one of them is that it was an early game and we got out of there at a pretty decent hour. It's not like midnight right now.
Yeah, I'm normally just getting on air right now. So this is
So we have
quite
fresh
nice.
Dan right now.
Well, fresher.
Well, let's get caught up because we haven't had a chance to talk for a while. We've had, between holidays and power outages and all kinds of things, we haven't even had a chance to speak to each other for a couple weeks. I've missed you, buddy.
Mm-hmm. I missed you too.
Well, the thing is, though, is that the Blazers had a pretty business-like and pedestrian week, so we wouldn't have had a ton to talk about because they just went out and did what they needed to do, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's a nice change of pace, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that to be like backhanded complimenty, but it is. But yeah, when our executive producer brought us in last week to prep for this week, he was like, "So we've got some milestones. Stotts is going to hit some, and All-Star games coming up, and the Blazers are ahead of pace where they were in the past." And I'm like, "Let's save all of that for next week because nobody's going to care about next week's games because you've got the Knicks, Bulls, and Hornets, and." Was any of those games interesting?
They took care of them, which was awesome because they struggled with that earlier in the season. You know, they would go out and get a really good win against Milwaukee, and then they would turn around and lose to, I don't know, pick
That's the thing. It's not like earlier in the season. That's the Blazers' MO.
Right. They have done that for quite a while.
For at least a decade. Like this iteration.
Well, I don't think they're
plus
the
of
only team who
Blazers.
probably does that.
No, but it's something that's like become their hallmark. Like I know it's easy to get jaded as fans on the negative side of things, but like there have been things that have just been baffling about this team over the last few years. It's very, very nice. I'm not trying to like poo-poo it at all. It's been very nice to see them get a quality win against the Rockets after on a back-to-back after a tough matchup with the Thunder, what was very winnable except for some poor execution down the stretch, and then just handle business. Make quick work of the Knicks, just mop the Bulls and the Hornets, and then move on for another back-to-back, which shouldn't be as hard as OKC Houston. You're hoping you'd get that game at Denver. But I wasn't surprised to see them drop a road game in Denver, a place where I think their winning percentage in Denver all time is something like 35%.
Yeah, they were talking about it on the pregame show, and it's not good.
Yeah, playing in Denver at Mile High.
Well, right. I mean, it's tough to play in Denver, period.
Yeah.
You know, with the altitude, it's just, you're more tired.
Hours. It takes 72 hours to get acclimated I think it's for every mile up that you go. Mm-hmm. So the Blazers tried to do themselves a little bit of a favor. They got into town yesterday. They left earlier in the day. I think they left at like 11 o'clock to try to get acclimated.
Oh, so they left earlier than usual to try to hang out.
Yeah, they try to do that anytime they're going cross country, or if they're going to some place like Denver or Utah, where like the altitude can mess with you a little bit. It's difficult, and then you throw in, Jokic, the refs being a little weird with the whistles, and some questionable late game decision making, and you end up what could have been a Blazers win into a Blazers loss. So, but again, it wasn't a bad game, just some little things just kind of nipping at their heels they need to clean up kind of going forward.
I think against all the teams that I would call, like, for lack of a better descriptor, good teams, like, I don't want to say anybody's good and bad, but for the teams who had the better records, like OKC, Houston, and Denver, the thing about all of those games was that neither of those opponents looked particularly extraordinary. And I was kind of thinking that that the Blazers would go into those and just be like, dominated by these teams that were on runs, that were in the middle of like getting their feet back under them, or just like running over, teams. And the opponents, I didn't think looked that great, including Denver, even though they're the first in the West. And the Blazers looked good, but they didn't look as good as they could be. So in a way, I was kind of heartened by that, even in the loss to OKC, they could have just done a couple of things, played a little bit better, and it would have gone the other way. So I guess it's kind of one of those weeks where you probably maybe didn't like it very much because everything was just kind of like to the mean. Everything was just pretty mediocre. Yeah. But it wasn't bad. So
no. And that's the thing is for me, it was, all right, let's see what the Blazers can really show here. Nurkic got things done even when he got in foul trouble in a couple games. CJ found a little bit of his groove again. The Blazers were finding kind of like this new style of offense where the ball is moving a little bit better. They're 25 to 30 assists a game pretty regularly. Again tonight, they had 25 assists against the Nuggets. I mean, you look at the box scores from tonight. Blazers shoot 46% from the field, 35 from three, 95 from the line. Only turned over 9 times. More often than not, that's a win. Problem is the top 4 guys for the Blazers in field goal attempts tonight, Dame, CJ, Nurk, Aminu, not a single one of them shot better than 38%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so their shooting was not great tonight.
Yeah, so your volume guys weren't getting it done, but your bench guys, listen to this, Tara. Jake Layman, 5 of 6. Myers Leonard, 3 of 6. Evan Turner, 4 of 5. Zach Collins, 3 of 4. Seth, 2 of 3. Stauskas, 1 of 3. So everybody but your top 4 guys really got it done tonight. Efficiency-wise, right?
Right. Well, but the guys who weren't getting it done, do you think it was because they were not getting it done because of the way that they were being played, or because it was just one of those nights where they were having trouble hitting?
Nah, bad. Nurkic was in his own damn
foul trouble.
head. Well, he was in foul trouble, which exacerbated the problem, because I thought Nurkic, who started the game, was very good. Once Nurkic got 2 fouls, he made it kind of like a personal vendetta to try to keep up with Jokic, and he just got in his own way. And I don't think it's going to be a problem going forward outside of playing Jokic. Like, I think that's going to constantly be one of his things. In the past, it's worked out for him. But tonight, it wasn't really listening. And for anybody who wants to beat Jokic or Nurkic up for Jokic going off tonight, don't. If you want to say he got in foul trouble, sure. But most of Jokic's damage tonight didn't come against Nurkic. I mean, most of it came on Aminu, who... Listen, I think the Blazers' game plan was let's let Nurkic single cover him, and when they didn't have that, they were left with either Myers or Aminu, and Myers didn't really get a ton of minutes out there against Jokic. And for everybody who wants to throw a double team at Jokic, you go ahead and throw a double team at a guy at a high post who's 7 foot tall, incredibly smart, basketball IQ-wise, and he's going to cut you apart. And then you throw on the fact he's maybe one of the 5 best passing big men of all time. So that's why that may get the preemptive, like everybody questioning, why didn't they double him? Because you don't double a big who posts up in the mid to high post who's looking to facilitate the entire time.
Are you saying it's more likely and effective to double like a guard, like Dame and CJ?
Yeah.
Than it is to double a big? Because if you double a big, that just means you have 2 shorter people jumping for the ball.
Not just that. He can see it coming from where he's out on the floor. And where you're going to double team him from, you're going to open up a 3-point shooter more than likely, right?
Right. And then if you send two people at a guard, it blocks their visions.
Yes, and the other part of this is Jokic is not your typical big man who's looking to score every single time.
Mm-hmm. He facilitates.
He had 40 points in the eye. He took 23 shots on it. He also had 8 assists, folks. Like, he is the hub of their offense. And if you start sending double teams at him, predictable double teams, because once you start doing it, it's one of those things where it's you either got to stick with it or you got to bail from it, because keeping them off balance, your own guys not knowing when you want to do it, that gets everything kind of off key. He's looking for that. And I have the game on replay right now, and Jokic wasn't their only problem tonight. The Nuggets didn't take a lot of threes, but they were 9 of 22. They shot 56% from the field, and really a lot of guys were getting open looks. If they're getting open looks without you really double-teaming Jokic, what happens when you start double-teaming Jokic?
Right. Rain him more.
Yeah, and so I'm okay with the Blazers' game plan. And I think if you want to question something, the not fouling in the final seconds, I can at least see that. But beyond that, some bad bounces, some dumb decisions. But I know this may sound weird from the guy who's always negative, but tonight's game against the Nuggets wasn't one of those ones that's like going to haunt me. How about you, Tara?
Oh, not at all. This was on my scale of the way I rate games. This was a pretty low rated game. It was a 1. As you recall, my rating system is 1 point for a win, 1 point if I don't have to go to work the next day, and 1 point if I don't have to ride my bike home in the rain. So the good news was it wasn't raining, but otherwise they didn't get the other 2. So, it could have been better. A win would have been really nice. But my point is, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't make me feel tremendously one way or the other. It makes me feel like, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It goes back to win the ones you should and some of the ones you shouldn't. And this was a tough one. This was, against the number 1 team in the West. Denver's has been pretty consistently holding that spot down. I'm not quite convinced that they're holding that spot down because they're really that good. I haven't really bought into them yet. I could probably change my mind. But
Jokic is that good, though.
I know.
That's a thing.
I guess he is.
He is, Dara. Like, I can understand the questions like, will Jamal Murray continue to be good and healthy? Will Millsap kind of round into form? Or enough of these like no-name or lesser known guys like Monte Morris and Malik Beasley and Torrey Craig and those kind of guys, like, are those enough? Like, is that enough like of a continued role-playing depth to sustain them? Those questions to me are all valid, but Jokic is a top 5 MVP candidate. Like, he's at that point now, which is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I guess.
Do you not agree?
No, I mean, we have this running joke amongst my friends who watch basketball is that Jokic is like Anne from Arrested Development, where you just like forget he's there until he's there. And you're like, oh, he's there? Like, oh, I forgot about him. Like, he's doing all this stuff, but like he's so unmemorable. So he sneaks up on you. I don't know how to explain it, but
I mean, it's not a flashy game. He's like we were talking about tonight. He's the smoothest of the smooth-bodied all-stars. Like, Paul Pierce is jealous of his flabby disposition. Like, there's nothing. It's a below-the-rim, non-flash, non-panache game. Like, it's and I just find that hard to watch, and so I resent it a little bit. See, I'm on the other side. You and I, you've been around me long enough to know how much I love the post game and footwork and like the nuance of that. Like, listen, I love Aminu's defense, but there was one play where he shook Aminu out of his shoes, and it was devastating because I thought Aminu played it perfectly until just this little subtle, just shoulder feint and then drop step and then beautiful footwork to just leave Aminu in the dust and get an uncontested layup. And I was like, I don't even know how Aminu stayed with him.
He stayed on his feet. I remember that play, and he did stay on his feet. He got caught going in the wrong direction, but he stayed on his feet. I thought he was
going baseline. I was screaming, he's going baseline. He's going baseline. He's setting you up to go baseline. And it was like Aminu was in the same frame of mind, and he was waiting for him to go baseline. And he gave him this unbelievably tight shoulder fake that made it seem like he was spinning baseline. And then he came back to the middle, and it was like,
Yeah.
How did that kind of?
Okay,
Listen, this sounds terrible, but he's a sloppy looking dude, and he just makes that stuff look so simple.
Exactly.
But it's not like this, like, oh my god, desirable thing that you want to watch regularly.
Yeah, and so just like you don't like watching Aminu play because you don't like chaos, I like chaos, so I find it fun. You like, I guess, the subtle, like, non-flashy kind of things that are just like, perfectly executed. So, that's why we have different takes on things, Dan. Well,
whatever.
This is not a Denver Nuggets podcast. Let's talk a little bit more about the Blazers. A halfway point in the season. I guess my main question for you is there anything that we know now about this team that we didn't know at the beginning of the season?
Well, I think this is going to sound hoity-toity as hell, but I've wanted to see this team run the ball through Nurkic more, particularly on the playmaking side. And I think more people are aware of, and the Blazers are realizing and really embracing that Nurkic is the second most important player in this team. It's no longer Dame CJ, it's Dame Nurkic CJ, and that's not the pecking order in shots. That's just, I think, importance because of what Nurkic means defensively and how much of the offense he unlocks offensively. I mean, we saw it tonight on the opening possession against the Nuggets. Do you think at any other point in time that we're getting a backdoor lob to Jake Layman to start the game if Nurkic isn't out there? No.
Well, and if it wasn't Layman, it would be Harkless. I mean, that's the same play that they do for Harkless.
Exactly. So, but that comes off of Nurkic's ability to see, anticipate, and make plays from the mid to high post that nobody else, save maybe Evan Turner occasionally, and Myers can make them when he does get the opportunity, when he's passing from the high post to the 3-point line. But fundamentally, it comes back to Jusuf Nurkic. As far as other things that they've learned, which bench guys or you can kind of count on. I think the whole, wait for Seth Curry, it's going to take him at least a month. Well, Seth has kind of rounded in. Yeah, it took him 2, but I think he's been what we expected from him. I see Seth as a 10 to 12 point a night guy who comes off the bench consistently and is to spread the floor and put a little pressure on defensively, work without the ball, work with the ball. Evan Turner, in that playmaking role.
But is that stuff is that stuff we didn't know at the beginning of the season? Is any of that a surprise, or is it just like we were waiting to?
I think most of it was waiting. The Nurkic stuff, I think, is surprising, especially as far as his shooting. Because remember, people killed me for saying that all I wanted to see was Nurkic up his free throw percentage and dunk once a game. And guess what he's done, Tara? Upped his free throw percentage and he's dunking once a game. And just those impacts alone raised his efficiency and effectiveness quite a bit. I mean, how many games have we seen now from Jusuf Nurkic where his free throw shooting has basically been the difference between a win or a loss?
Yeah, because he's getting good at getting to the line too.
Yes, that's what I mean. It's been a huge thing. Not only is he getting there, he's getting it done. And for a guy who was a career 61%er coming in this season, to all of a sudden be damn near 80%, that's quite the change.
You touched on some of the individuals coming off of the bench as something they've sort of figured out, Evan Turner and Seth. But as a unit, are you surprised that do you feel like the bench is having more success than, being able to not even just go out and not not fall too far behind, but actually go out and build leads? Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it surprises me because the bench is long. I mean, since LaMarcus era, the bench was always like, oh God, please just keep Portland in the game.
Don't give up too much ground.
Yeah, they had an 18-point lead. The starters come back in, and it's a 2-point game. You're like, oh God, now they have to try so hard to close this game. Why? Tonight we saw Zach bounce back after what was a rough period. Myers giving the Blazers anything has probably made most people happy, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think in a lot of people's eyes, Myers was, I don't want to say lost cause, but written off.
I would say that there was at least a vocal group
who would say he was completely
would
done,
say
right?
that he was over. That he, they were, a lot of people were saying that they were done with him.
Yeah, Jake Layman. You know what? people said it was crazy when I said I'd rather see Jake start than Mo. Jake continues to have these moments in these games where you're just like, yeah, Jake Layman's actually a pretty decent player. Hell, Tara, they ran a post up tonight for Jake to start the second half.
Jake's posting up.
I was like, what in the hell is going? Like, it wasn't like, some on the fly thing. Like, they had a play drawn up for Jake Layman to post up, and I was like, this is to go from DNP to have plays run for you. Mm-hmm. It's a little weird, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's the kind of the typical thing that they've been doing all year, which is to get one of the,
the other guys.
Yeah, one of the other guys, yes. The first play.
Yep.
And and it's never Aminu. So it's always whoever is in that third spot.
To be fair, how many nights has Chief gone without getting his shots?
Oh, I'm not saying that it should be for Aminu. I'm just saying it never is.
Because in the pecking order, it's Dame, CJ, Nurkic, and then I'd probably put Aminu as fourth as far as the shots pecking order. Mm-hmm. Right?
Who gets the shots?
Yeah, and you're going to hate me for this, but I'm at the point where it's like, should that be the case? Mm-hmm. Like, I think I'd rather see a bit more of a shooter get those shots, like maybe Seth or Jake.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's whoever is, whoever's producing.
Rolling.
Like, if Chief is having a tough shooting night and somebody else is shooting, I don't see any problem getting the other person the ball.
Yeah, Chief should not have 1 for 10 shooting nights.
No.
Like, if he's like 1 for 4 and like he goes to that 1 for 5, that should be the last shot for Chief.
But like, if he's having those kind of nights, it's because he's open, So would you have him pass it one more time into a covered person? What would you have him do in those situations?
I think I'd maybe not have sets quite as much where Aminu is the guy where it's going to end up in, because how the coverage is going to come.
So those are plays that the team is running. It's not necessarily that Aminu's getting the ball and he's shooting. Oh, he's being selfish. It's they're running those plays. Is that what you're saying?
They're not running them for Aminu. That's where the action is coming from, because the double's coming. Mm-hmm.
But if what they're taught to do is get the best, most open shot, would a better way to do it is just have him play fewer minutes and have him not be out there to be the person who's the most open to get those open shots?
Yeah, that's kind of, like I said.
Is that where you're leaning and you just don't want to say it because you're afraid you'll hurt my feelings?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's okay. It's okay, Dan.
Dane Delgado and I were talking about this tonight. Remember Ben Gulliver with his shake rating?
No.
Like, it basically has to deal with variance. On a night-to-night basis. And if I had to venture a guess, Alfred Camino probably has more variance than just about any other player in the league when it comes to three-point shooting.
Yeah.
Like, his good nights are usually very good, and his bad nights
are so good.
And his bad nights are really
so
bad. Like, you're like 1 for 10, 0 for 9 type nights, and you're like, holy crap, please stop shooting. I think if you had a guy who was more about like 1 of 4, 2 of 5 every night,
right,
I think it would be more beneficial for Portland. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The only problem is then you're giving up his defense.
Yes, I'm just saying, like if it was Chief that was just getting, the not taking as many but making more
of the ones that he's taking.
Yeah, more consistently. Just consistently. Mm-hmm. If Chief hit like 1.8 to like 2.2 threes a night, like on average, where that was just the mark, but he was only taking at most like 5 on like his busiest nights. Mm-hmm. I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, but that's having the rest of the team also agree to that. I mean, you know what I mean? Because he's getting the ball because he's open, because the other teams aren't guarding him, and he could either pass it on into somebody who's covered, or what else can he do?
I mean, this isn't like the poop on Aminu time either. Like, I love Chief.
Oh, I'm not. I would not let that happen. But we're having a reasonable conversation about what he brings and doesn't bring to the table. So you're not. You don't think we are?
No. I'm with you there. I'm just kind of like going back and forth. Like, well, but for how much longer are we having that conversation?
Well, Correct. So here's what
what
I'm going. There's been a few times over the last week, this very business-like week, that they've played Collins alongside Nurkic, and I feel like they're auditioning Collins to try to figure out if he's ready for that position that's currently being occupied by Al-Farouq Aminu. I have no idea if that's what's happening, but in my mind, knowing where they are with Aminu and the contract situation and all that stuff, and whether or not they're going to want to try to, move him at the trade deadline, I figure they would do that if they felt like Collins was ready to step into that 4 spot. What do you think about that?
So, this is kind of going to get into the other stuff that we're going to talk about here, but it's no secret. Like, I've talked about it plenty of times. You and I have talked about this plenty of times, off air, on air. This whole idea that the Blazers are going to be willing to go into the luxury tax and limit what their MLE is and be a taxpayer for a team that's not that competitive. Like, they're competitive.
More competitive than I think we thought they would be at the beginning of the year, wouldn't you?
Sure. Okay. Slightly more. But again, we're not there isn't even like remotely likable scenario where if things just broke just the right way for the Blazers, I could see them in the Western Conference Finals. Like, you would need a lot to go their way for that to happen in my mind. But with that said, they're in this weird spot where I think last year and the year before they were talking about trading Al-Farouq Aminu and Ed Davis, but they were so integral into what the Blazers were doing that they couldn't afford to trade them. They found other ways to cut around the margins, let Noah Vonleh go for, nothing. So now you're getting to the point now where they've trimmed so much around the edges where it's going to finally cost them a rotation guy. And I just don't think that they're looking at this team and going, you know what? This is the one. We're going to pay the tax for this team. Do you?
So are you saying will they find a way to reduce salary by $7 million so that they don't have to pay the luxury tax?
No. I'm saying, do you think they carry this same roster into the post All-Star break?
So here's how I look at it. If I was looking at it, and God knows I don't know what I'm doing, but if I was looking at it, I would look and think of, is there anything out there that would make that big of a difference to this team? And, if they were I don't think that they would make a trade just for the sake of making a trade unless they've been told to do it for money. But as far as trading for personnel reasons, because they think that they're going to find just the right player, they got probably super lucky with Nurkic. And we've watched this team, how they build slowly and they build people in slowly. And one of the things that is the key to the success that they've been having is continuity and going out and getting somebody new to be part of the rotation in the middle of the season. It just has like the whole Aaron Aflalo thing written all over it to me. Like,
oh, come on,
that just didn't work. That just absolutely did not work.
That worked out phenomenally. They gave up a useful asset in Will Barton for a guy that they kept for 2.5 months that was ultimately useless for them. Come on, that's a win-win.
So,
don't try to defend that in the comments, people. I don't want to hear it.
So, I don't see them making a personnel move for the sake of improving, like, quote unquote, improving the team at this point, given that there are so many other teams who want to do it. And the way that this, like I said, the way that this team is built and the way that we've seen them grow over the last couple of years is by guys getting to know each other and having strong relationships and being able to, and obviously Nurkic is the exception, but I really think that was an exception.
They stumbled into that one. Here's another solidly grounded theory. Let's put it that way. The Blazers signed Al-Farouq Aminu and Ed Davis with the sole purpose of developing them, flipping them for future assets, but they became so valuable to the team that they couldn't trade them, and that put them in a weird spot. They're quote-unquote stuck with them without being able to move them to get a cheaper up-and-coming or replacement-level player to keep things kind of going and keep contracts fluid. And now the bill has come due for those guys, and they have become so valuable that they won't be able to find a ready-made, suitable replacement. Now, obviously, didn't find one for Ed, and now the same is going to be true for Aminu, unless they are willing or able to move somebody else other than Aminu, i.e. Harkless or Turner. But I think Turner's a guy who's become more valuable to the Blazers than any other really potential other team. And I think if you force the Blazers to answer this question, they would rather get away from Harkless than they would Aminu because of the versatility. And even as we were talking about, you want more consistency from Aminu. I think Aminu offers you more consistency easily than Harkless. I mean, the number one ability, Tara, is what?
Availability.
Hey-o! Aminu doesn't miss games.
Nope.
That dude, I mean, knock on all the wood.
Yeah, jeez.
But he is about as steady a lineup guy as you can find in the league. He's there.
Hashtag Aminu Appreciation Society.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd love to see if a way the Blazers could keep him through the season, and then maybe they get him on a team-friendly deal. I don't think that happens. That's just reading the tea leaves.
Right. Well, let's go ahead and pivot into the trade deadline discussion if you want, if you're ready. So I was taking a look and trying to figure out, like, what are the Blazers doing right now to prepare for the February 7th deadline?
Okay, so not just the Trailblazers, everybody in the Western Conference, except for maybe the Suns. Even the Suns, maybe, because they still need a damn point guard. Yeah. Every team in the Western Conference, hell, all around the NBA, have made calls, both receiving and making them themselves, and they're trying to find out where everybody sits. Who's a buyer, who's a seller. It appears like this is going to be a buyer's market. It looks like there's going to be more sellers than buyers, which is rare. It's been the other way around lately.
There's going to be more sellers than buyers, more people who are willing to change their, to give up players to take in new players rather than people who are just trying to move on from.
Yes, I think that what's going to happen is two different things. The Eastern Conference, there are teams that are looking to blow it up because they're not there or they're in weird salary spots. And then in the Western Conference, I think there's teams who are looking to load up more. Willing to give up a guy here or there, but to continue bolstering it with young guys. Think the Kings. The Kings need a small forward. So I think that they're looking at that position.
Do you think this is because there's more people than expected in win now mode? Like maybe because there's some weakness with Golden State, or
yes. There's some viability, not in the immediacy, but in the next year or two. Mm-hmm. Like I firmly believe that Durant is leaving Golden State. Like even if they cut them the big check, I think he leaves. I think there's a good chance that Draymond leaves because Golden State is not willing to pay him. So I think that dynasty may be just on the shelf here.
Not actually a dynasty.
Yeah, I mean it's
just a team just a super team that is over.
Yeah, I think it falls apart very quickly if it does. And with that, I think with those whispers, I think you see some GMs and some execs around the league maybe willing to hike up their pants a little bit and get to the table. So calls are being made, and really over the next 2 to 3 weeks, teams will solidify if they're buyers or sellers.
So in addition to solidifying if people are buyers or sellers, are they also talking about what they're looking for, or are people just having to infer what their, collaborators are looking for?
Everybody knows what
that's out there on the table.
Looking for that. It could change, right? You sit there and you look at it, and Memphis, they've got all that money sunk into Chandler Parsons. They look to buy him out. Will they be looking for forward help? Are they serious about being buyers? Do they want to give somebody up? Do they want to give an asset up to maybe make a playoff run to show Jaren Jackson with Mike Conley and Marc Gasol what the playoffs look like? Mm-hmm. Like, is that something worth doing? You take a look at the Kings. Do they look to add somebody to maybe make a real playoff push? Do they think LeBron is injured for a long enough time to where they could make a real playoff push? The Spurs have so many injuries, but they're
and yet they
playoff.
play so well. Oh my God, it's so frustrating.
But so they're looking at, okay, we definitely are struggling in our backcourt. Like Bryn Forbes and Patty Mills are giving us real minutes every single night. Like, do we need to maybe look for something? Do we get an injury exception and look to maybe add somebody in the backcourt? For the Blazers, clearly they're looking for wing help. I don't believe there's any truth to the Jeremy Lin rumors. I think that's something from the Atlanta camp or Jeremy Lin's camp, or somebody else doing somebody else a favor, because if Portland's kicking the tires on Jeremy Lin, it means they've already given up on Seth Curry right when he's starting to play well. If anything, I believe Portland called Atlanta and asked about Taurean Prince. And Atlanta was basically like, well, while you're here, we have a lightly used Jeremy Lin. It'll cost you 1 first-round draft pick. And which, if Neil O'Shea has even got half a brain cell, was like, nah, I'm good, fam. Click. So
when that rumor came out, the Blazers were interested in Jeremy Lin. It just made no sense. I mean, it just absolutely there was no sense to it.
Right.
Why the last thing on earth they need right now is a point guard, and like that's the last thing that they've ever needed for the last several years
since 2012. That's been true.
Like we finally figured out where the point guard finally figured out how to work out the guard rotation.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's
so. By all
that's
means,
an issue at all.
don't bring in Jeremy Lin. So what about Taurean Prince?
I mean, he kind of fits the mold, right? Young player, has some potential, 3-and-D guy. I mean, he's a guy I could see Portland going after and targeting. Atlanta clearly has cap space. Would they be interested in a guy like Aminu? Aminu, played his game down there. He's from around there.
Atlanta.
So, I mean, there's got to be maybe some interest there. If you're Chief, you get a little audition down there, or for Harkless, because you have to get some salary out going here to make this kind of all happen. But I think the key thing to take away here is that we heard coming out of last season, coming into this season, and again this week, that Portland is willing to part with their first-round draft pick in order to make a deal. Whereas that was not the case this time last year.
Is Taurean Prince young enough that he would be considered, a longer term part of the team?
Yes. So he is in his third year. I'm pulling up exactly how old he is because I can't remember how many years he played in college. He is 24.
Okay.
But yeah, he 6'8", 220. Pretty much ideal for what the Blazers want.
So I'm also concerned if they make a trade deadline trade, and move somebody like Aminu, that it's a really strong possibility that they won't make it into the playoffs just because it would disrupt what they've got right now.
Well, and that's the balance game that we hear, and this is why I said my strongly grounded theory as far as Ed Davis and Al-Farouq Aminu, and the reason those guys weren't traded is because they were key cogs.
Mm-hmm. They're like kind of in the same position right now.
Yes, exactly. Taurean Prince is, if that's the move they make, makes the most sense. If you could give up a first-round pick and Maurice Harkless for Taurean Prince, I believe that gives them enough room to be under the cap. I believe that's what it is.
But if I was Atlanta, I wouldn't offer that because that's too easy.
Yeah, trust me, I get it. But it all depends on what they're looking at here. They're going to want more than that. I think you have to at least kick the tires on something along those lines. Do they want Aminu? Do they want a veteran guy in the locker room? It's a weird situation. There's certainly truth to that.
Yeah. So in addition to sifting through rumors about Atlanta and who they might or might not want to trade with Portland, another conversation that I've heard come up, in the media about is after the trade deadline, then comes the buyout period. Mm-hmm. And I'm really curious because right now, like as we sit here talking, there's at least 2 guys, and I think there's more like 5 guys, but I can't remember who they all are, who we've been informed are no longer with their team. So Carmelo Anthony, Chandler Parsons, guys like this who are, big names on teams who will no longer be playing with those teams, and the teams that they are on now have to figure out how to move on from them. So give me some thoughts on some different scenarios and way those things could play out, and whether or not they might play out before the trade deadline or after during the buyout phase.
As far as Portland's concerned, they would have to permanently move Wade and Caleb or one of them or waive them to the G League.
Just for room, you mean?
Yeah, because their roster spot, their roster's full. So they didn't use any of their two-way contracts up, so that would have to happen first. And then it would all depend on how much money one of these guys was getting as far as what they were looking to get back from another team. Portland can only offer the minimum.
So if they part ways, so let's say this is totally for the sake of just understanding how this works. This is not because I want Chandler Parsons, but it's just he's a name I'm using. Let's call him like, what else could we call him? Bobby Marsons. Okay, so Bobby Marsons is owed like $70 million or whatever. Does the team that he plays on, do they have to pay that entire thing out either directly or by stretching them and then release him? Or like if they can't find somebody to do a deal?
So basically it's a mutual agreement between both that the player will be waived. Then agent teams sit down and they hammer out what portion is needed to pay to be able to get out of that contract for both sides. It really depends on what it looks like, right? You have your agent basically talking to other teams, who's willing to pick me up, who's not. But depending on what the buyout is, whatever's remaining on his contract, that's what goes on waivers. So you get a 48-hour period where you go on waivers, and if a team picks you up, you get picked up for the remainder of your contract. If you clear waivers, then basically you get all the freedom in the world, and you get to decide where you want to go. And that player now has cleared waivers, and he's able to go sign wherever he wants.
So if Bobby Marsons, if the team can't find a place to trade him, and one scenario in which somebody might be interested in absorbing that contract might be because they want to pick, right?
Okay, wait, what?
Most people aren't going to want to take on that contract, right? Mm-hmm. But what
Nobody
if they had picks attached to that contract?
I mean, you could trade for it, but that's not going to be.
That's what I'm saying. So in the unlikely scenario that anybody wants to, like the one case in which people might be interested in taking that on would be if they
Atlanta,
had picks.
You've got a crap ton of cap space.
Yeah, and you really want picks, then you might be like, okay, we'll do it. But that's unlikely given the situation that everybody is in. So,
like if you're Cleveland right now, if you can do anything to get more draft picks, I would do it because you're such a bad team. You should be willing to do basically anything.
Yeah,
you should take on all the dead money in the world.
Yeah, and just amass
stockpile picks because you're so bad. But hey, Cavs beat the Lakers tonight.
Yeah,
shout out the Cavs.
I don't even know if Memphis has their first round pick. But anyway, okay, so he doesn't get picked up. So he and his agent sit down with the team and say, okay, I want out of this contract so that I can go play somewhere. And they say, okay, we want to let you out of it, but we can't really pay you the whole entire thing. And so they settle on some mutually agreed upon, like, we'll pay you $25 million to walk away or whatever. With that, and that would be like a lump sum. Here's $25 million. And then the rest of that, he and the rest of that go on to waivers?
No. No, then it's that whatever that agreed upon amount is just gone. That's poof. If I explain that terribly, that's my fault.
Well,
So
it's a really complicated thing. So this is probably not the most exciting thing, but I'm sure I'm probably not the only one out there who doesn't exactly get it. I hope I'm not the only one out there who doesn't exactly get it.
I'll put a link to the CBA FAQ, and I'll put a little bit more in the podcast description. So
yeah, but the CBA like explains it in like very nebulous terms. I'm like I'm walking through it with a person, so that see what it's like.
So what ends up happening is you agree to a buyout, and then that player, whatever contract he agrees to buy out the number, give back, take, whatever you want to talk about it. Then what ends up happening is signs a new contract. Whatever team wants to sign him, the contract's null and void, so he can sign. And this is what ultimately ends up defining the negotiation. So let's say Chandler Parsons and the Memphis Grizzlies are just hating each other.
Right.
But Chandler Parsons has been healthy, and he's been effective, and he's been good.
And he wants to play.
Yes. And nobody is willing to trade because of whatever reason. Now, this is the most ridiculous thing ever, but let's say that's the case. And basically, Parsons knows that there are plenty of teams out there that want him but aren't willing to trade for him.
Right.
Because of whatever stipulation in his contract.
They don't want to pay that, or they just don't want to pay that much money.
Yeah, okay, let's just say that's the case. And it's just completely, like, the relationship is just not repairable between him and the Grizzlies. And they can't trade him for whatever reason. So they agree on a very minimal buyout. And Parsons and his agent agree to this knowing that teams X, Y, and Z are willing to offer another new multi-year contract the second he clears waivers.
Okay.
So it's a weird spot. But the thing is, for Portland to be able to pick up any of these guys, which is kind of funny that we spent all this time talking about this, they have to cut somebody or trade somebody for nothing in return other than picks. So, and then you also have the fact that if it was Chandler Parsons that the Blazers were interested in, which wouldn't be the case. Remember, CJ gave him one of the nastiest online burns in the history of sports. So.
Yeah. I just think it's interesting that there are a number of players out there who have already basically said that, like again with Carmelo Anthony as well, that, this relationship is not going to go on. And I'm interested to see if people try to if they find a home during the trade deadline or if it happens later during the buyout season.
Yeah, it's
good to know that Portland is not likely to be involved in any buyout situation
spot.
because they just don't have the money.
They don't have the money or the roster spots. But I think that, and I hinted at this when it first happened, is that I believe Wade and Caleb being sent down to the G League was twofold. One, if blowout minutes do come, they want them going to Simon Trent. Two, I think that makes them more readily available to deal. So, could be interesting. It should be interesting over the next few weeks what happens with Portland as far as the season is concerned and how that defines what they do or don't do going into the trade deadline.
Well, speaking of, moving into the future, the Blazers have, again, continued to just play every other night. And in a way, it's kind of fun because, there's always Blazers.
Tell you what, I'm busy.
But in the other, I just look at them and I just think, oh my gosh, they must be so tired. But so they were in Denver. They go to Sacramento tomorrow. And then later this week, they play Cleveland in New Orleans.
Trash. Cleveland is so bad.
Yeah. But, they did a good job of taking care of bad teams. I mean, it's like we're still at that point where we hold our breath.
No, I mean, if the Blazers lose that game, that's the only way possible that they can sink lower than that Wizards loss to start the season.
That would be that one.
Yeah, that game was so bad.
I'm concerned about the Sacramento game because I'm afraid they're going to be tired after Denver, and Sacramento is just an exhausting team to play.
Yeah, so we were talking about that in the post-game show. You just got done playing a long game where everyone, basically but Nurkic, just because of foul trouble, had to play deep minutes as far as the heavy rotation guys at altitude. Now you have to get on a plane late at night. By the way, I bitched about this plenty of times, but it's ridiculous the travel time it takes any NBA team or any sports team in the world to get from a sporting venue in Denver to the airport and then out of town.
Yeah, people talk about that a lot.
It's no joke. With any kind of traffic at all, it's like an hour and 20 minutes. Like, that airport is so far away. And after a long game, a tight game, you're just wanting to get out of there as fast as possible, get into Sacramento, which is also another place that's not easy to get in and out of. But now you have to, after traveling all night, getting to Sacramento, after playing at altitude, being exhausted, now you're going to go play the team in the NBA with the highest pace in the league. And De'Aaron Fox, not maybe, the fastest player in the league.
Yeah, that's gonna be really tough.
Yeah, no, just
Has anybody been able to successfully slow Sacramento down?
On possessions, no.
Yeah, I mean, how do you do that? How do you slow down a team that demands to go fast?
Make them pull the ball out of the hoop every time. You just score on them. You grind every possession to a halt, and you score every time.
So you slow down, you hold it on for the whole shot clock, and then you make it.
Yep. You have to be efficient and grind clock. Just think the Memphis Grizzlies or the Spurs 10 years ago. The Pistons even. Like, if you're that kind of team, if you're a very dedicated, meticulous, veteran-laden team that does, like, you don't waver at all, that's how you take care of the team like the Kings. Because remember, in the Nurkic game where the 20-25 by 5, the Kings went 0 for 19 over a stretch. That's how you beat them. It doesn't matter how fast they go. If they're pulling the ball out on their end and they're not scoring on your end, it doesn't matter how many more possessions they get. Because they took 25 more shots than the Blazers that night, Tara. 25. That's insane.
Well, and Portland, I believe, has the ability to slow things down pretty well.
Absolutely. You go to a pick and roll game between Dame and Nurk, and you just beat them up.
I mean, I just see Damian standing there at the top of the, coming across the half line with his arm up in the air, dribbling the ball. It's like, okay, we're going to use as much of the shot clock off of this one.
And honestly, they did that for long stretches of that game. We're like, okay, we're going to grind this down here. Just make this happen.
So Cleveland, we're hoping that the Blazers will take care of business yet again. And then New Orleans. So Blazers, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe earlier this season they beat New Orleans.
Without Anthony Davis.
That's right. They didn't have Anthony Davis. It was like Julius a big blowout, Randle, but they didn't have Anthony Davis.
Yeah, Julius Randle went nuts in that game. It was like, oh, okay, Julius is pretty good.
Yeah.
But yeah, AD should be back, and he is balling out of his mind right now.
God, there are so many players right now that are balling out of their minds.
Yeah, the crazy stat line guys are.
They're just taking it to a whole new level.
You know my favorite one from tonight was James Harden going 1 of 17 from 3. It was good times.
Everybody loves it when James Harden suffers. It makes me kind of uncomfortable how much everybody loves that. I feel bad for the guy
Harden
sometimes.
Is a masochist, and even James Harden likes when James Harden suffers. So, just for perspective, James Harden over the last 10 has averaged 41, 10, and 7. Actually, 10 and 8. Second in basically all of those types of categories has been Anthony Davis, who is over his last 10 games averaging 32, 16, and 4 assists, 2 steals, and almost 3 blocks.
What's their more recent record, though? Because they've struggled this year.
They're 4-5 in their last 9 because AD did miss one of those games. So I had to scroll awful long way down to find the Pelicans. I think they're 5-5 in the last. Yeah, 5-5 in the last 10.
Yeah.
So, but Randall's averaging 22, Drew's averaging 22. So you get 70 points a game between AD, Drew, and Randall. That's not a easy one to get by.
So, is there a problem that they just don't have anybody else who can produce beyond those 3?
Yeah, no, you get a little bit of help from like Etuan Moore, and Mirotic's been nicked up. So yeah, they.
So with the new ball handling Nurkic, the Blazers should have a better shot against New Orleans this time.
That's a game
with
that
Anthony Davis.
Yeah, that's a game where I've got the the dart and the board on. Like, let's see how the Blazers do against one of these new age freaks. Like a guy like AD who just blows up game plans. No, I mean it's what they are. They're a new age of basketball, and they're a freak. I mean, Anthony Davis, Giannis, guys like that. They're just.
I just think we can come up with a better word than that.
One of them's literally called the Greek Freak. Okay,
no, that's his brand.
Yeah, okay, man. It is what it is. We've seen it work against.
They're exceptional players.
We've seen it work against the traditional guys, even like a Clint Capella or a Steven Adams.
Yeah.
Guys like that. I want to see how it works against AD. I want to see how this looks because they kind of toyed with it, but they didn't really use it against Utah because they're getting a chance to use it. They have Utah right after New Orleans. So I want to see how it stands up against those guys and kind of get a real feeling for it. Because the Blazers really, they have games that are either tough or laughable for like the next 2 weeks. So like, you
Cleveland
get like,
and then New Orleans, Utah, and then OKC, and then Phoenix and Atlanta.
And Atlanta. Yeah, you're just like, oh, okay, cool. So it's either going to be just a complete and utter catastrophe type game where you're wondering what's going to happen all night long, or it's just, hey, take care of business. This team is awful. There's really like no in between.
This continues to be a good test. But it's not like in December where it was like a nail-biting kind of a test. This is more like they've come through and they've shown us some stuff. Now can they keep showing it to us? Yeah,
that whole month was just like, oh,
but they came out of it pretty well.
Yeah, no, they did. But every night was just a slog. It was just like, oh, God. It's another night? Okay, cool. Who do they have? Oh, another playoff team? Awesome. It was like they just did not get a night off, and that's just tough. And it's nice to see the schedule lighten up a little bit. You took care of business when you needed to. Would have been nice to get one against Denver, but now you go take care of Sacramento, Cleveland. You get your coin toss game. You should win against the Pelicans at home, and then you go off for a 3-game trip against Utah, OKC, and Phoenix. And you're like, well, be nice to get one of those Utah, OKC games, and then beat the crap out of the Suns. Then you're looking at heading into the All-Star break, like what, 7-8 games above 500. Yeah, I can dig.
Yeah, that would be nice. And they got they have a lot of tough decisions to make around the trade deadline. I just think it's so interesting. Cassidy and I talked about this a little bit on the last episode of the What podcast, that basketball is just full of hard decisions. Like the players, the coaches, the GMs, it's all hard. There's no easy decisions in the league, or like there are rarely is anything cut and dry. Like, it's obviously we need to do this.
Vote Damian Lillard for NBA All-Star.
That is an easy decision. Have you voted yet today?
Huh? Yeah.
Have you voted every day?
No.
Dan,
I'm terrible about that. I'm like, when I'm in the control
do you want me
room
to send you a reminder on your phone? Because I get it twice a day.
I'm definitely not going to be the difference between him making it as a starter or not.
Not with that attitude.
Nope. But have you seen the latest returns?
Yeah. And Derrick Rose has more than 1 million more votes. So you're just going to throw your hands up in the air and be like, it doesn't matter if I vote? That is a dangerous way to go about it.
Because that vote right there shows you that humanity sucks.
Well, humanity is certainly not on the same page as me. That is for sure.
Yeah.
But you know what's another easy decision?
What's that?
Donating tickets to Blazers Edge Night so kids can go watch the Blazers take on Ed Davis and the Brooklyn Nets in March.
Yes. You're getting a few alley-oops here.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. They've taken my hashtag throw more lobs seriously over the last couple weeks.
They actually
like
are.
4 a game now.
Yeah, they had 5 alley-oops just last week. They had 6 in the whole month of December.
I know.
And then they had 5 last week, and they had 1 more tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm just really glad that they have $10 seats options available to me, because I'm like going to be buying a lot of tickets for Blazers Edge Night. But that is okay. I will do it with a smile because it is for a great cause.
Yes.
How about you? Now, what is your Blazer related pledge?
I think I'm just going to end up donating a flat number.
You're just going to donate a number?
Yeah.
That's not very exciting.
No, but I just want to make sure it gets covered. So
yeah. So for people who didn't listen to mine, I'm donating for made alley-oops. I was up in the air about whether or not I was going to do made or attempts And I decided I would go with made because they make almost all of them, but not quite all of them. And that might be the difference that I need from paycheck to paycheck.
So this is not really breaking news, but it was earlier tonight, and I just came across my feed. The Bulls, speaking of buyouts, are refusing to negotiate a buyout for Robin Lopez, which is preventing him from joining the Warriors. Listen, Warriors, piss off.
They want Robin Lopez too?
Yes. You know why they want Robin Lopez? Because they're sick of Jusuf Nurkic handing them their ass every time they play. And there's a realistic chance that they match up in the playoffs, and they don't want to be without a big body.
What about
they may face
Boogie?
Denver. It's unsure. Are you comfortable with Boogie coming off an Achilles injury, even if you know everything that's going on in-house with the Warriors matching up against the Nuggets or the Blazers?
I'm pretty sure Boogie's going to be fine because he doesn't have to. They're not designed to have their center do that much.
No, but they need to have a center who can play defense.
Yeah.
And do you think Boogie is going to sit there and play defense all night without getting the ball? They
really want Robin Lopez. Oh.
Yeah, they want a guy who doesn't need the ball and plays consistently good defense.
Yeah.
That's why I said they can go ahead and piss off. Good times.
Good for them. We have to end on a happier note than that. Find something else happy to talk about.
Oh, the Blazers play tomorrow night?
Yeah.
Tonight? Whenever you're listening to this. I'm going to edit this in the morning because I've got a billion things to take care of, so have fun with that. But how nice is it to see the Blazers play a game against the Kings? It's fun.
Right, yeah.
Like the Kings are fun.
The Kings are fun, yeah.
Like
yeah, I've been thinking about the Kings a lot lately. We talked to somebody from Kings right at the beginning of the season, right after the draft, and they were still slightly reeling from not getting Luka, but I think they're pretty happy with the pick that they got. But it's been really fun to watch that team this year. I'm a little worried about them if they make the playoffs, about just getting eaten alive in the playoffs because of like the change of pace and everything, and just like the youth and experience on that team. But I was also in the same thought thinking about Denver, and when they go to the playoffs, I mean, they still haven't been to the playoffs.
Playoffs?
I mean, everyone's expecting them just or not everyone, but, people talking about them, just marching to the Western Conference Finals. And I believe they're super, super good.
Do you, Tara? Because I don't believe you do.
I believe they're good. They're just I'm not all about them right now.
That's fine.
Because the Blazers just lost to them. But, I mean, they haven't been to I guess the fact that they missed the playoffs on basically the last day of the season for the last 2 years.
You're just waiting for the wheels to fall off.
Doesn't give me a lot of, confidence in their ability to play through the playoffs.
That's understandable. All right. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up here. And hope and pray that the Nuggets don't make the playoffs.
The Denver Nuggets won't make. I think they'll make the playoffs.
You think so? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure they're going to make the playoffs.
The wheels could fall off pretty handily.
That would be the meltdown of all their wheels are on solidly enough to get them to the playoffs.
All right. Well, you know what's on solidly? The other stuff you do at Blazers Edge, Tara. Why don't you go ahead and let everybody know?
They can find me at TCB Biggs on Twitter, and at Blazers Edge I write my weekly Mom's Favorite column, which has been really fun, and I love doing it because I get to just focus on all of the good stuff, and I don't have to pick apart all of the things that are depressing about the team. Like if they have a rough week or whatever, I'm in there looking for the good stuff. So I've been having a blast doing that. And we have the Women's Hoops and Talks podcast that comes out every 2 weeks. We had a Women's Hoops and Talk meetup tonight that was so much fun. It was packed. It was our biggest one yet.
Sweet.
And it was very lively, and nobody was terribly mad or disappointed about the game. Everybody was pretty satisfied with how the game went off. But so if you want to come to a Blazers What meetup, we have them monthly. The next one in February is going to be on the 10th. It's at noon, and they're going to be playing Dallas, so it'll be kind of like a brunch. That'll be kind of fun. That'll be February 10th. You can follow the Hoops and Talks podcast at Hoops and Talks on Twitter. And I think that about covers it for me.
All right, sounds good. I think that noon start game, I think that's the day I'm going to be making my famous breakfast burritos for Shane, Joe, and the rest of the crew at Blazers Outsiders. Speaking of Blazers Outsiders, you can find me on before and after every Blazers game on NBC Sports Northwest, talking Blazers basketball? Question mark? There was something else I was going to plug here. That's what it was. Had Dane Delgado on the show tonight. Tomorrow we will have Dave Dufour of Count the Dings. Coach Dave, if anybody knows who he is, you should if you listen to the podcast because we've had him on plenty of times before. But Dave is going to come in and he has a special guest. It's a puppy.
Oh, you're going to have a puppy on the show tomorrow night?
Yes, we're going to have a puppy on the show. Not 100% sure if it's going to be pre-game, but he will 100% be there post-game. Still trying to work out the logistics because he's flying in or driving into the studio like immediately as he gets into town. But that will be cool because Dave's a good friend of mine and friend of the show, friend of the pod, friend of everyone. So if you want to get some cool insight from somebody other than Joe, Shane, or I, because really we don't have much insight anymore, Dave will be there to give it to you with all of the spicy takes. You can find me on social media at Marang, at DMARANG. Questions, comments, concerns, hatred, all that kind of stuff, continue sending it. We love talking about it everywhere. For Bowen-Biggs, I'm Danny Marang. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next week. Bye.